So starting from the first pain point that a staffing agency has typically is, how do I find candidates and clients? How do I differentiate myself there? So we build private labeled mobile apps for our clients. And so the first pain point is I pay Indeed way too much money. How do I get more applicants without having to keep paying Indeed, which is my competitor, by the way. Indeed is one of the largest staffing agencies in the world. Leaders in staffing that have figured this out are the ones that are going to dominate and are already dominating. So you need to have a hybrid approach, right? What's interesting is these gig platforms, we're finding that they wanted to take a technology-only approach, and they've gotten the technology systems in place, but their end clients are saying, wait, we need more of a human touch, right? I don't just want to press a button and then have a candidate show up. There's things that staffing agencies do that only staffing agencies can do.
Welcome to another episode of The Staffing Ring. I'm your host, Jason Lawson, and today I'm joined by the product strategy leader of Staff Up app. Welcome, Bryan.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, good to have you here. We've been talking a while, so it's great to have you on. And with your experience, I'll let you kind of share with the audience. You've been in the staffing world for many years, so moving from in agency to now serving agencies. I'm really looking forward to the conversation today. So, quick intro from yourself, your background, and what you're doing today at Staff Up app.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for your patience in scheduling with me. I know I'm a bit of a pain in the butt sometimes, so I'm glad we were able to make this work.
We're all busy, so yes, completely appreciate it.
So Bryan Wilson, like you said, I'm the head of product strategy at Staff Up app. We are a mobile staffing platform or staffing operating system. We kind of go back and forth on the terms. But I come from staffing. I've been working in this industry for almost 25 years now. It's kind of weird to actually say that. Got my start, working as a sourcer at a recruiting company back in 97, I believe, 98. Went through lots of boom and bust cycles, so I've worked for staffing companies. I've ran my own staffing companies. As with a lot of people in staffing, I've had to reinvent myself multiple times, right? In terms of the industries that we've served. So I've worked in tech, I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in, manufacturing, staffing, all sorts of different ones, right? But kind of flash forward, the last staffing company that I worked for, that I owned and operated, was a family venture. I decided I didn't really want to be in business with family anymore. Much deeper story to that we won't get into today, but that kind of made me look for some other ways that I could kind of expand my career, and that's when I went into the software side of things. So started working for various software companies, and then eventually started working for software companies serving the staffing industry. So I headed up the North American operation for JobAdder, which is a large ATS globally. And then after that, joined Staff Up app because we saw a really cool opportunity here, and that's where I am today.
Brilliant. And I love the transition that people like yourself make who have been in the industry, understand the job, the desk, the leadership of staffing agencies. And so just curious, what sort of motivated you to make the shift from agency side into software that serves, the staffing world?
Yeah, well, I would say that the biggest motivation is that when I decided to start up my first staffing agency, I was in tech staffing, and I was right during the bubble, right? The first internet bubble in the late 90s. And so it was a struggle for 4 or 5 years. Like I said, just trying to reinvent ourselves, right? So we eventually became profitable. It took a long time to do so, but we got there. But after that 4 or 5 years, again, working with family through that, I think I was just kind of ready to try something new, right? So for better or worse, that's kind of when I changed to try to go into the software side of things, I guess.
Which, it brings up a good topic, and that is, a lot of agencies who, have perhaps been around for 10, 15, 20 years, and then a lot of their value proposition and standing out in the market was the people, whereas today the tools, the technology, probably on average less face-to-face recruiting and staffing. How are you seeing agencies and teams using Staff Up app and other technology to still stand out, to still make a difference in how they're working with their clients?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, at the end of the day, I think no matter how much technology we add, this is still a people business, right? We see some big trends in the industry where people are trying to kind of get the people out of it and automate a lot, and automation is good. But again, I mean, the people that we work with are real humans, right? So we think using technology that enables more human connection is the way to go. So meeting candidates where they're at, bringing it back to that candidate experience and client experience as well. And what are candidates and clients kind of expecting today, right? Where has technology already taken them?
Yes.
So if you focus on that candidate experience, like what I mean by that is, we develop mobile technology. Most candidates these days, especially like in blue collar industries, service industries, they're already using apps like Uber or, and there's an Uber like app in every industry, right? So if you're a staffing agency and you have a candidate that's experienced what it's like to find a job on their phone, communicate on their phone, get their pay stubs on their phone, and then you're saying, hey, come work for me and fill out your timesheet manually at the end of the day and slip it under a door at the end of the week, what does that say to the experience of that candidate, right? So I think that's kind of where we're going, if that answers your question.
It does. And the way I understand, Staff Up app is your mobile first solution, really, I guess in some ways disrupting, a lot of the paper or even desktop solutions. So I guess what specific pains and challenges do you really think carefully about when you're, building the product or positioning the product or selling the product?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's all the pains that the staffing agency experiences right now, right? There's a lot of manual stuff going on still to this day for staffing agencies. And when you do high volume, it just is exponential in terms of the little things that you do every day that add up, right? So we take kind of a holistic approach with that candidate experience, right? So starting from the first pain point that a staffing agency has typically is, how do I find candidates and clients? How do I differentiate myself there, right? So we build private label mobile apps for our clients. And so the first pain point is I pay Indeed way too much money, right? How do I get more applicants without having to keep paying Indeed, which is my competitor, by the way. Indeed is one of the largest staffing agencies in the world. So, why am I paying my competitor? Let's take a playbook from Indeed. And what does Indeed do? Most of their applications, you can Google this, most candidate applications come from their mobile experience. So people prefer to search for jobs on their phone versus, they're watching Netflix. So if you have a mobile app, you can stop paying Indeed. You can pay Instagram, you can pay Twitter, you can pay Facebook, and you can advertise your mobile app specifically as a service and bypass the job board altogether. So that's like the first step, right? Is let's get more applicants in. The next step after that is what are the pain points? What are hard for agencies? So typically that's screening, that is onboarding, right? Onboarding, every agency does this in so many different ways, but how do I provide a mobile optimized experience? So instead of like sending a bunch of paperwork to a candidate to fill out, if they're on their phone, pinching and zooming, looking at the I-9 forms, the W-4 forms, we TurboTax it, right? So we take those complex forms, make them mobile optimized. We do automatic reminders, things like that. So it just kind of, that next step in the process is then optimized for that candidate, right?
Right.
So we keep going from there. So I can keep elaborating if you want, but through the timesheets, deployment, redeployment, all the way to getting paid, all that stuff can happen in a mobile experience for the candidate.
And through that whole experience, you're presumably really touching on the productivity, the efficiency, and the sort of time saving of checking and balancing, right through, as I say, the clocking in and out and timesheets and payments. How is the kind of return if I'm an agency leader thinking about transforming that whole candidate experience? How do you kind of position the value versus, obviously there's a cost of the platform, Is that something that there's some friction there in terms of investment into a new piece of software?
Yeah, I think with anything, right? It's we're dealing with businesses, so like, what am I already using? What can I add to it? What can I do to make sure I'm not completely disrupting everything that we do, right? So that's always a challenge. That'll never go away. But I would say it's a different challenge depending on like the size of the staffing agency and the type of staffing agency that we're dealing with. So like, for instance, when we work with like smaller staffing agencies or even startups, we're seeing a new breed of staffing entrepreneur that, what I would say, gets it, right? They know where the market is going, and they know that just a traditional applicant tracking system and posting to Indeed isn't the way of the future, right? So they seek us out, solutions like us that say, okay, you get this mobile first future that we live in. I know that's where it's going. I want to start fresh. I want to start from the beginning, building this new agency using these new technologies. Those are my favorite people to work with because, again, they get it and they're helping us make us better, right? And they have these different ideas of where staffing can go and how that experience can go. For a larger agency, a mid or a large size agency that already has a system, they have already got like an applicant tracking system in place, a bunch of other vendors they're dealing with. So in that case, it's a little bit more of like an integration piece, right? So if they're using a Bullhorn or a Job Adder, we do integrate with it. It's more challenging for us from a technical perspective because we basically built the features already in our platform. Then we have to kind of reinvent it by plugging it into the ATS, but still that allows people to take advantage of this technology without upending what they're doing. And I would say, finally, we have some very large organizations that also see the future. They don't want to go out and spend millions and millions of dollars to build their own app, but they're working with us as kind of a future proofing. Like, okay, I'm using an ATS now. I see your platform. I can't switch everything now, but let's partner together to put in a 3-year plan if that's where we're going, and kind of build this future together, kind of thing.
Sure. For many agencies that I speak to and certainly hear from, bringing on new software, as you've said, like there is friction in that process because there's established processes and tools. They often also find that once it's implemented, there's an adoption challenge. Is that something that you also see, like when you're rolling out to a new client, and if you do, like how do you kind of solve for that?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's just human nature, right? So if I had a perfect solution for that, then I'd probably be, a rich guy, solving the human nature thing. It's been a challenge as we grow because, one, our product is very unique and each client tends to want to use it differently. So what we've found is that, like, by kind of truly partnering with these companies and kind of treating it as a long-term type thing, what we thought was going to happen, right, is when we built this software, we're going to give it to somebody, they're just going to start using it, it's going to be amazing, and we're good to go, right? For smaller companies, that's the way that it works. For the larger companies, it's more of a, this is something we're doing over the next 6, 12, sometimes 18 months, and we're going to start slow by saying, okay, we're going to introduce this in a single branch and a single client to start, right? We're going to prove that concept. We're going to expand it to another branch, another 20 clients, and then kind of go from there, right? It helps when you've got a client that has like a separate EIN and maybe they're building a separate brand or something like that. So we've had to invest heavily in our side of having really competent implementation teams who understand staffing and really work very directly, sometimes on site for a long time, to make sure the technology works the way it should inside the organization.
And for those mid to large size agencies, I presume then you're working with sort of head of operations to really put that plan in place and to work alongside them to deploy that. Yeah,
it's typically a vision thing with the bigger companies, right? So
sure.
It typically is a CEO or COO that's coming to us that's saying, okay, I see these gig economy platforms that are coming in and taking up a big part of my market share. I know this is where we need to go, and I need to find the right partner or the right approach. And so they're typically evaluating, do I want to get into the software business and learn how to hire developers and manage those developers and spend millions of dollars and go that approach, which, by the way, almost hardly ever works? Or do I want to find a partner that's kind of doing this and partner with them that way. But yeah, it's those COOs that we're partnering with for that long-term strategic plan for the bigger ones.
And it's an incredibly timely conversation to have, I think, in terms of, 2023, 2024, very rocky conditions that we've all kind of been through, both from the software and the agency side. So thinking about that strategic 2-3 year plan, any advice you could kind of share or perspectives you think agency leaders should be really considering in terms of how they think about not just their software and their tools, but also just how they're running their business?
Yeah. Well, now's the time to kind of reevaluate everything and see where things are going to be in 2 years from now, right? 1 year from now. We know all these technologies that are coming into play, artificial intelligence, all this stuff is just accelerating. The human aspect isn't going to change. The thing that I like to talk to people about, especially leaders, is that this big pressure that's coming into staffing, which we call like gig platforms, right? I think a lot of them kind of look at it as separate to staffing, that these are technology companies, and they are, right? I mean, these people are raising hundreds of millions, sometimes billions, to disrupt staffing, right? And they're focusing it on a mobile experience, mobile apps primarily on the candidate and client side. But my argument is that gig is staffing. It's just the evolution of that, right? And the leaders in staffing that have figured this out are the ones that are going to dominate and are already dominating. So you need to kind of have a hybrid approach, right? What's interesting is these gig platforms, we're finding that they wanted to take a technology-only approach, and they've gotten the technology systems in place, but their end clients are saying, wait, we need more of a human touch, right? I don't just want to press a button and then have a candidate show up. There's things that staffing agencies do that only staffing agencies can do, right? Working with those temps, training them, following up, doing that stuff that staffing is good at. So the gig companies are rolling back, trying to be more like staffing. The staffing companies need to meet gig where they're at. And that's where you have that perfect combination, right? So you kind of need to evolve into it. And by the way, the gig economy is growing at 16 to 18% in general, whereas staffing is growing at 2 to 3. So which industry do you want to be in?
Yeah, I certainly know the horse to pick on that front. Absolutely. And I think it's also like, the amount of technology and the power of the technology too, for me really excites the landscape of the potential for small players to really punch above their weight. And you mentioned before about, you have, clients in that space as well. What are you seeing in terms of opportunities for, whether it be in certain verticals or geographies, or are small players also thinking more global as well, because they have these tools that they can really deploy and scale, beyond, a people kind of growth function. Like
what are the opportunities that can open up? Is that kind of what you're saying? Yeah. Well, it is kind of a mindset shift, right? So like, I think that the world is your oyster if you can embrace platforms like this moving forward, and there will be first mover advantages. I mean, that's already happening, right? But I also think that a lot of these kind of first movers are kind of generalistic in that they're trying to kind of go after the entire market. So you've got kind of like the big boys. I think there's a big opportunity to still localize like staffing agencies do, but using this type of technology, right?
Yeah.
So giving that same experience, but at that local level, but leveraging distributed teams. So I think the future will hold, not necessarily that staffing agencies will have less internal employees altogether, but that certain functions like what we call like the recruiting of the delivery team right now is kind of like a hybrid / support role that could be centralized. Those people could work from anywhere essentially, right? But the people you want to invest locally are the client-facing individuals that are maybe driving your sales, driving events, those kind of things that can scale up that still need to be very local. So I think there's big cost savings on that, but also the opportunity to really invest heavily on the business development side while saving money on the other side, because those things can be automated and streamlined a lot more. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
It does. Again, I think, well said in terms of thinking about the different functions and parts of the business, and it doesn't have to be a 360 model. I think in some cases, technology can allow for a very efficient 360 model, but then in others, as you say, a distributed workforce, whether it be across different time zones or in different countries where the pay rates may be different to help be more efficient and profitable, which a lot of agencies do need to look at when their profit margins are being squeezed.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that starts with honestly payroll. Looking at how you do payroll, I see a huge choke point for a lot of staffing agencies these days is how they run payroll. There's a lot of them, most of them are still very much stuck in the past in terms of it's a very manual process. It takes a lot from your margin because the way you track time, the way you reconcile, the way you have to get all the paperwork done. There's tools out there that make that much, much more efficient and also enable things that the candidates are looking for, like instant and same day pay. So if you're using a payroll platform that doesn't do those things at the minimum, I think that's a really good start, because that's kind of the most important thing. Like, you got to pay people, right?
Right.
And work backwards from there. And if you can do that, you'll be more competitive as well. Because if you have a worker that's using an app that says, "Hey, here's a shift this weekend or next week," and as soon as you're done, you get paid instantly, versus the same job that says, "And we'll pay you in 2 weeks from now," which one do you think that person is going to get, right?
Exactly. So we talked about the 2-3 year planning and being strategic about the business. Also, very aware that a lot of agencies want to move quickly, adapt quickly. What would you say is, two critical actions they should be really thinking about when considering about, Gigi and, the mobile workforce and a mobile app like Startup App? What can they do to really lean into that?
Well, I think the appropriate answer is the solving the problem for your staffing company is maybe a staffing problem itself that you should solve. So I think that you should start by hiring the right people in your internal team that understand where this is going and understand, maybe are digital native type people, right? So there's a lot of people that have worked in staffing for a very long time, and I love those people, and those people should stay working for your organization, but they might not be the right people that understand this technology and where it's going and are right to lead your company into the future. So you need to search out and find what I call growth hackers, or some people might just call this a data analyst, but somebody that understands that the best way to market is not just to post more jobs to Indeed, right? The best way to market might be to utilize social channels, to utilize app marketing, to do things that haven't been done before, that understand systems, that understand how to link those together, that isn't just looking at the typical industry stuff, but saying, what can we do that's different? You need to have that mindset and somebody driving that internally. If it's the CEO, great. But typically the CEO's got a lot of other jobs, right? So hiring that person on your team, that growth hacker, whatever you want to call it, I think is, for the people that I work with that have that role defined versus the people that are saying, well, I know we want to go here, but I'm going to have, Jim Smith or whoever it is that's worked for me for 20 years lead that initiative. It's not that Jim's not awesome. He is.
Right.
But he hasn't done that before. You need somebody that's ready to do that, right?
Yeah. So it's really, drink your own champagne in terms of staffing the right talent for the right roles. And I think about it in terms of people, process, technology, right? If you can get the right people in the right seats on the bus, they can help identify the right process, the right plans, and then you bring in the tools. And I think a lot of people, the 2022, 2021, they were just buying tools because it was shiny, it sounded good, maybe a good salesperson on the end of the call. But yeah, it's really sort of flipping that script to say, all right, get the right people in place, as you say, build the process, and then what are the tools that can really serve your goals, your clients, and your market.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I've seen people that hire people that understand this, like these growth hackers, right? These digital specialists. I've seen them do amazing things. They're not using these out of the box ATSs, right? They're stitching together best in class stuff like HubSpot, they're using Zapier to do all these automations versus, an out-of-the-box ATS and out-of-the-box automation platform. There's a lot more flexibility when you have people that understand how this stuff connects, right?
And particularly on the business development side, which, in essence is very much a business development in a software company where, having that good data, that we've talked a lot about that on this other podcast episodes, having good, clean, reliable data that you can then making those outbound and nurturing of contacts. And then on the staffing and temp side, it's about having the right, as I say, the right database of, can you build the database of, workforce, as I say, without going to Indeed? Is there that more sales and marketing approach rather than a more traditional staffing approach?
Right. Yeah. And then every staffing, business development person has done this forever. You typically sell not only your people and your process, but the technology that you're leveraging to make it happen. Right. When I started, it was just, we have a database of 10,000 people, right? And that was pretty cool because before then it was just piles of paper on our desks, right? Flash forward today, it's like we are using mobile first technology to meet candidates where they're at, and clients where they're at, enabling more automation between the two, giving you access to free tools that we've developed, and then augmenting your workforce from there, right? So it's that evolution.
Yeah, exactly. Want to be conscious of time, Bryan. Going to start wrapping up with just a few other questions of interest.
Sure.
Really, just think about your career and time in staffing and now in software, serving the staffing industry. Has there been like a piece of advice that you've been given or a perspective that you've gained through that you could share with the audience as a valuable kind of takeaway?
Boy, I mean, I might have already mentioned it on this, but and it's probably speaking to the choir. But as I've grown different businesses and stuff, I mean, it all has come back to learning how to have the right people on my team. I'm struggling when I don't hire the right people, and I am growing exponentially when I do. And I don't know how many times I have to learn that lesson. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but those are that's the biggest lessons that I've had to learn. There's a bunch of others, but.
Yeah, I think in many ways it's a hot take. It might sound, cliched or traditional,
right.
But in the world of AI we're in today and technology, a lot of people are saying, people are not the biggest asset today in your agency. It's data, it's the tools, it's. I
don't think that could be further from the truth, right? It's people that know how to leverage that data and those tools, but you can have all the data in the world, and if you don't know what to do with it. Like you were saying with the process, right? Technology can exponentially help, but it can also exponentially, take you in the wrong direction. So if you have a bad process, that technology is gonna 10x the bad stuff, right? Whereas a good process, it's gonna 10x the good stuff. The important part is getting that process correct and having someone that knows how to do it.
And understanding what does the team look like? What are the perhaps gaps you have today that you need to fill, if it's somebody that's more social media driven or growth hacker, as you mentioned before. Any books, podcasts, or kind of resources that you kind of enjoy or would like to recommend to the audience?
Books or podcasts or others? Geez, that's a tough one, man. There's a lot of stuff that I like to listen to. I mean, I definitely am a podcast guy, but I'm sure some of the ones that I listen to, people know already. I like 0 to 1 from Peter Thiel. That's been a driving thing for me on building companies. Right. I'm just kind of having that mindset. I like listening to Modern Wisdom. It's a good for men and
Chris is amazing as an interviewer, isn't he?
Yeah, it's a great one. I really like Alex Hormozy a lot. I love that it's all about hard work. That's kind of what I've found in my life. It's like you can wish all you want, but really the thing that separates the good from the bad is people that are willing to put in the time and the effort, and So I guess those are a few.
Yeah, I saw today actually someone's created a custom GPT of Alex Hormozy's, all of his work, they fed it all into a GPT and then put it on LinkedIn that you can actually just
Talk to him.
Get that chat GPT and he can be your coach. So,
right.
Yeah.
Every response is just get back to work, just work harder.
Yeah. Go big, go hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think those are all, great examples of, I think, just thinking about, as say, like modern wisdom, it's thinking all about the bigger picture, and 0 to 1, again, a great way to think about transforming, a market through, really being clear about how do you get, first base, second base, third base in terms of that strategy. So I think, those really reflect a lot of what we've spoken about today.
I also, I almost always just read and listen to like nonfiction, and recently started actually reading some fiction just to turn my brain off. So if you're like me and like you never stop thinking and like trying to learn, like it actually is really good to just find a good fiction book every now and then and like read it. So it feels funny to say, but like I hadn't read a fiction in probably a decade, it feels like, right? So it's nice to turn my brain off and just get into something and detach a little bit.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that. Even going on holiday on the beach, taking it.
Yeah, reading a business book, or a self-improvement book. It's like, come on.
Yeah, actually, last summer I did take it on a fiction. It was running with Kenyans. It was about a British guy who went down to Kenya to see, how fast he could run, actually living and training with these, super runners of the world. And it was, quite a fascinating kind of story of his experience.
Yeah, I like that Born to Run book. That reminds me of that one. It's great.
So getting back to staffing, recruiting, what excites you about 2025 and the year or two ahead for the industry?
So much. I think there's so much that can be done to kind of like transform, and we call it mobilutionize, but because revolutionize is used too much, but to mobilutionize the industry. It's like literally, I think staffing agencies can kind of reinvent themselves from the ground up to be more efficient, to make more money, to, again, meet these candidates and clients where they're at. And I think that we're at the ground floor of doing that. So just like literally everything's exciting to me about that, right? From the way they communicate with people, the way that they pay people, the way that they onboard, schedule, all of that. There's nothing that I'm not excited about. How about that? So that's a harder question.
I love the perspective, because it's been tough, and when I do speak with agency leaders, there's a lot of voices that they hear in terms of internally, but also just from the market of how hard it is, or how technology is changing, the landscape and the competition. Whether in-house talent talent acquisition can do more now because they've got better technology, and how that, and I think a lot of it is a transformation about the service that agencies need to think about how they provide. It's not purely just placements. It's actually being that coach of staffing, and actually how to run and build teams and getting the right talent, and what's the strategy around that, not just bums and seats, if you like.
That's right. Yeah, I think the best agencies are figuring out how to do that, right? As an example, the education piece, right? Like finding people is hard. What's the best way to do that? And some of the best agencies I see out there are figuring out how to create these workforces, right? So think about IT, like, okay, we don't have enough IT people in whatever town we live in. Let's build a school that's centered around our staffing agency that creates that pipeline of talent, right? I'm seeing that in a lot of different industries. How do we offer career upskilling for these companies? How do we partner with these companies? I could go on and on, but in every industry, it's a little bit different.
Yes. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, wrapping up, Bryan, is there anything that I should have asked you, or any sort of final closing kind of thoughts of what we've discussed today?
I don't think so, man. I mean, like you see, I love talking about this stuff. So, no, I appreciate the opportunity. I think just if anything, yeah, like I said, the big pressures coming into staffing right now with the gig economy and stuff, I just really encourage people to not think of that as separate and figure out how they can kind of merge with the Borg, if you will, and realize that it is one and the same. It's just the evolution of where our industry is going. So you need to have that people plus technology approach. And when I say technology, it's not just an ATS with a couple of bolt-ons. I'm talking about fundamentally rethinking how technology will play, using gig economies as a example, but then using the best part of staffing, the people part, and marrying those two. So I think the people that are thinking about that are going to survive and thrive in the coming decade. Yeah.
Great wrap up. Thank you very much. Where can people find out more about Startup App, and where can they connect with you online, Bryan?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so just Bryan Wilson, and then staffupapp.com is our website. There's a bunch of information there, and all the links to the newsletters and stuff. I write a every once in a while type newsletter about my thoughts, but you can get that right on LinkedIn. So that's pretty much the best spot.
Great. All right, we'll drop all of those in the show notes along with the the 3 podcasts that you mentioned. So no, it's been great, Bryan. Really appreciate your time. Love the insights, and look forward to seeing more about what you and the business will be doing over the year ahead. I think as you say, mobile first is such an obvious mega trend, and I'm sure a lot of agencies will be leaning more into that in the year or two ahead of us. So thanks again.
Thank you, Jason. It was awesome being on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for joining, and look forward to seeing you on the next episode.